Welcome to WA Wildlife, formerly known as Native Ark. Normally with Wikimania you get to visit exotic places and see interesting things, not just sit in a conference centre all the time. This year, because we're virtual, well, we'll bring you a video of somewhere a little bit different and unique and try to include as many cuddly and interesting animals as we can. Hi, I'm Angara. I'd like to introduce you to Dean Huxley, Director of Operations here at WA Wildlife.
Yes, that's correct, WA Wildlife.
And you guys do rescue.
Yeah, so we're probably the leading wildlife organisation in Western Australia, or we like to think so. Although we do work with a lot of really great rescue groups. We have obviously this amazing hospital, so the WA Wildlife Hospital. We also have the WA Wildlife Ambulance, which is on the road every day of the year. And then we also have our rehabilitation facility and our education and training centre. So we're really busy in the community doing a lot of education, wildlife rescue, veterinary medicine and rehabilitation.
And at the moment we're in the triage areas. This is where the rescues come to first.
Yeah, so obviously we receive animals from vets, rangers, members of the public, and we at the moment receive more than 4,000 animals a year that come through this room. And so the animals will go into one of our incubators, stabilise, and then our vets will come and examine those animals before they go into the other areas. So it's really important, this room, because it's the place where they first go to receive that first treatment.
Yeah, and those incubators don't look big enough to put a kangaroo in, do they?
No, so look, a lot of the animals we get are small birds, reptiles, marsupials, but we've got some larger ones, but we've got, as you see later, a number of wards for kangaroos, for emus, for pelicans, cormorants, you name it, the whole gauntlet. We do everything from tiny little honey eaters right through to emus. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we get more than 4,000 animals each year, and a lot of these animals require some pretty specialised surgery, so orthopaedics, abdominal surgeries. We get a lot of seabirds being brought in with hooks, so they have those hooks removed. So the animals need anaesthetics and oxygen and all sorts of things. And surgery here too, if people come down to the WA Wildlife Hospital, people can look into the surgery from reception, so they can actually come in and actually watch a surgery unfold right in front of them, which is
so
pretty awesome.
See the rescue with the
Well, exactly, and we're all about behaviour change. So if people hopefully see an animal having a fishing hook removed and they do a lot of recreational fishing and they just may not dispose of their stuff properly, they might look at that and go, oh, hold on, that's what I'm doing. And that's
put a lot more effort.
Exactly, that's what's happening.
Gear and other types.
100%. So we're all about behavioural change education and having this closer. It's the only place in Western Australia we can actually have a tour of a vet hospital. So we think it's pretty cool, pretty awesome.
And we've now moved across to radiology area. I hope it's not a nuclear reactor. Science like that hiding behind us, does X-rays. So. And Meg, is it?
Yes, hello.
You're what, one of the vets around here?
Yes, I'm the senior vet here.
So you get to look after all the animals.
Yes, I'm responsible
make
for
them all
the
happy and
animals.
healthy again.
Exactly, yes. So there's quite a few animals that come through, and some of them are very unwell. So we do quite a lot of exciting surgeries and medical procedures and things here, and just make sure we get them all back on the right track. And if we can't, then we are able to humane euthanize if we need to.
If you need to. Obviously you don't want to do that.
No, we don't enjoy doing that.
So you've got X-ray machines and all digital now, so they come up in a...
Yeah.
And what have we got, a duck there by the looks of it?
We do. So I'm just about to do a surgery on a duck. So this duck came in with a broken leg. It was rescued by our friends at Seabird Rescue. So we're going to put some pins in the leg and try and stabilise it and make it a functional leg again so it can walk.
Well, that's really interesting. Pacific black duck or something more exotic?
This one's a Shelduck.
Shelduck.
So a little more exotic than a Pacific black, but not a lot, yeah.
So this is our patient that we had the X-ray from.
Yeah. This is our little Shelduck that's about to undergo surgery. So we've removed the food, as you can see. Normally they've had a nice food bowl in there with them as well. But she's just had some nice pain relief, some nice fluids, just chilling out for a little while, but very soon we'll put her under anaesthetic and see what we can do about the leg.
Alrighty, so we're just going to move through to our intensive care unit, so we're going to keep the noise a little bit lower because the animals in here are quite fragile. We want to make sure they're stress-free.
Are you joining us, mate?
I guess so.
Have a look over here, we've got an echidna. So Meg can probably explain a little bit more about actually what's wrong with it, but yeah, Meg, did you want to?
Yeah, so basically this little guy came in after he was hit by a car, and that's a very common injury for echidnas, is that they'll get hit while they're crossing the road. These guys are big balls of muscle, but their beak is very fragile, so it often gets fractured if they get hit on the road, and this one's quite a nasty break, and they're very, very difficult to stabilise these fractures because anything you put on an echidna, they will try and claw it off. So at the moment he's sedated, he's not dead, he's just asleep, but we've fashioned a nice little external splint out of some polymer beads, and we've moulded it to the shape of what the beak should be and attached it with glue and stereo strips and all sorts of things. We have to get a little bit creative sometimes. So fingers crossed, this will do the trick. So far he's breathing nicely. Hopefully he keeps on doing that.
So this is our seabird and waterbird ward, and we receive hundreds of seabirds and waterbirds every year. We've got a really cute juvenile pelican in here, little female. So she came in this morning, so you can see by the colouring, she's quite young, very small beak still, and those really dark grey colours will eventually turn into that nice white plumage that you normally think of the pelicans. And if you look at this one,
How did she come in?
so this one here, she was just found displaced, not flying on the road, so it would be fairly normal for a juvenile pelican. Probably not long left the nest about a month ago, and she's probably struggling a little bit to find food and get around. This is an adult pelican.
A little bit more camera shy.
Yes, yeah, and this is a male pelican, so a little bit different.
And these come in the same way?
So this one here, same thing, displaced, skinny, not flying, so they can come out with all sorts of things, parasites. Sometimes they might fly into power lines and get a bit concussed and dazed. Yeah, so we have a number of species-specific wards. So we've just been into our seabird and waterbird ward. We've got a bird ward, a reptile ward, a mammal ward, an isolation, intensive care. So all these different wards that are designed specifically for certain animals. So, depending on what's wrong with the animals, we get probably 180 different bird species coming. Up to 180 different bird species that we have admitted every year, and so we've got Tawny, frogmouth, kookaburra, got a little dove, so anything from tiny birds right up. And the vets will do full workups on them, X-rays, fecal tests, and then our volunteers provide all the daily treatments, feeds, record keeping, and then they move out into our rehabilitation areas, which we'll have a look at later, where we can assess their fitness and get them strong enough to return to the wild. Okay. Close up of that. Maybe this guy here would be a nice little close up, look, Tawny frogmouth.
So this one's the tawny frogmouth. He's juvenile, is he still?
No, that's an adult.
Adult?
Yep, adult.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So he's been coming from?
Yeah, well,
probably knocked out of a tree in the storms and stuff.
This one, entanglement actually. So
got caught up.
Yep, he was.
So bobtail lizard?
Bobtail lizard or shingleback. So this is one had the flu, so we treat them for flu and isolation, and as it sounds like with the flu, runny nose, weepy eyes, sneezing, and they get the same thing. So it's actually
he's ready to go.
He's ready to go now. So here's this.
So what kind of area would you release him back into?
Exactly where he's found. So obviously each animal has like a reference number. So and you can see he's got a tail band, which I don't know if matches up the paperwork. So this one we've got the exact location where that one was found. and that will go. And because they're monogamous as well, they breed for life, so we need to return where they're found so that they can reunite with mate and keep breeding and continue their species. Yeah, so look, it's been a challenging 18 months to say the least, and we, as a veterinary hospital, we're classified as an essential service, so we have been open every day since obviously COVID began. However, we've done everything we can to do our bit to reduce, to flatten that curve and reduce people out in the community unnecessarily. So on a given week, we could have up to 250 different people here throughout a week. During that COVID lockdown, we have those lockdowns, we go down to 18 to 25 people. And that's, we reduce things back to their basic. All of our education and training programs stop. It really is just down to the vet hospital services that we're providing, so treating sick and injured animals. So if people still find animals during that time, we've still got to pay for that. Yep. All of our fundraising opportunities dry up. We can't do any education training, any fundraising programs. So we do often tap into our reserves, and we do rely on people donating to help us keep going during those times. So it's been challenging, but the community's been fantastic. Supporting what we do. And we're committed to just keep going and making sure that there's a service for wildlife available even during lockdowns.
Yeah, as we were walking out, we were talking. You mentioned that this is a relatively new area of conservation. It's not something that would have happened. I suppose I'd say when I was your age. How's that sounding for feeling old? But yeah, 20, 30 years ago, this kind of care just wasn't.
No. So look, we really are. Look, I think, and our whole entire team, really believe that we're pioneering what we're doing here. Wildlife medicine is still in its infancy in the world, let alone in Australia. And so, 30, 40 years ago, if people found sick and injured wildlife, they'd take it home themselves and try and look after it. So, our real, unsung heroes of the past, the wildlife carers that did it in their homes. Or, if I'm being perfectly honest, a lot of the time the animal would be euthanized. People would euthanize the animal that probably could have been treated now, but back then there wasn't the option for endoscopes and ultrasounds and blood tests and all sort of stuff. So we're really fortunate we live in 2021 where we can provide these amazing diagnostics.
We're in one of the bird cages. Obviously, this is
Raf.
Right.
So Raf is one of our resident animals. So we have, in addition to the hospital work where we treat and rehabilitate wildlife, we do a lot of community education. So we have school groups and community groups coming down, and so we have a number of animals on a license that they're tame, and we can actually take them out to schools and people can interact with them. So Raffy's very tame. If we say up, and Raffy will jump up there, and he'll come and say hello just like he did then. And then if we say up,
yeah, up again.
There we go, and he'll jump up. So Raff is absolutely amazing.
And you're turning around to face the camera, so
he's trained. Yeah, he actually has done this before. No, he loves the camera. He's a bit of a show pony, Raff. And yeah, he loves the camera. So Raffy is really good because kids as little as 2 or 3 years old, he'll sit on their shoulder. He's as gentle as anything. You can offer him a sunflower seed and he'll take it out of your hands, not a problem. So wildlife ambassadors like Raff are so important for what we're trying to do and to spread our messages out there in the community.
Raf, when you're educating, does more than squawk and walk around on people's arm. Obviously there's a purpose to showing the impact.
Correct. So look, all of our wildlife ambassadors, there's a story there, and we tell, and obviously, so black cockatoos.
You want to come over here? No?
He's like, nah. Black cockatoos, obviously here in Western Australia, the Carnaby's cockatoos, they're an endangered species, and the red-tailed cockatoos are not far behind. And the main reason that they're becoming such a concern for them is habitat destruction. So we're clearing a lot of the old growth forest at an alarming rate. We're looking at about 10 football fields a day equivalent that we're losing of their habitat.
Australian football fields, not
correct.
Soccer
No,
football.
Exactly. So Australian AFL fields are massive,
which is about 3 to 4 times the area.
normal, exactly. So there's a lot of old growth forest that we're losing all the time, and that's their habitat. They need these 200-300-year-old trees to be able to nest, and so if we can clear all this land and we can plant new trees, it's going to be 300 years before they can breed again. And so that's the message that we're trying to encourage kids and even adults, that don't realise the impact that we're having on their habitat. And so we've actually got, we're trying to sign a lot of petitions at the moment to support old growth forests. So there's a lot of stuff that, and people don't often have that connection. They meet Raffy and then they want to save the forest. So Raffy is so important for getting that connection with people rather than just a petition on their desk. They see Raffy, they're in love, we want to save the forest. So he has probably more impact on conservation than most people do.
So Raff, you're a little red tail. You're going to take a bite of me finger? No, I'm not that silly. I know if you wanted me finger, you'd have it. Well, thank you, Raff. You're doing a really good job. And you want to be fed, don't you? So we'll have to go out of the cage and leave you alone. Moving on to some bigger birds. We've got a nice emu here at the moment. He's another one of your permanent residents, I guess.
Yeah, so we've got 3 resident emus. So we've got Pete, he's our youngest resident emu, so he's about 2 years old now. We have Witchy and Weirlo who are around here somewhere, which will, it's a bit worrying that they're not coming up to us. They'll probably come and attack us soon, but no, they're fine, they're tame as anything. And so yeah, people can come down, again, part of our education programs, and they can hand feed the emus, and you can see how tame Pete is. You know, wild emus are incredibly dangerous, so never approach a wild emu like this, and never try and grab them, because, you know, even Pete would weigh 45 kilos. And
talons would make a big mess of you.
They would absolutely mess you up. So yeah, the last emu that kicked me, big gash on the arm, still got the scar to prove it, so you don't want to get kicked by one of these guys. And Pete's a small emu. You know, they can get a lot bigger and a lot tougher than that. So.
Wikipedia wise, how much do you use it? How much?
All the time, especially in high school when I was trying to pass my exams. You know, they told me not to.
I think a lot of us did that, yeah. Oh, the emus are getting in the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, I'm a big Wikipedia fan, you know. It's, the information is so easily accessible, and that's what I like about it. And I've always found the information to be pretty relevant and pretty, you can, you know, look at something that's quite detailed or something that's quite simple at a conceptual level. And for wildlife, you know, you can get so much information about wildlife from Wikipedia, so we use it all the time. Especially when trying to ID things, going to Wikipedia, checking the species, and you know what it is, so. Get an ID, get an idea of whether it was in its normal area or not. Hello, you want to have a bite of my phone, do you? Oh, look. So this is Pete, everybody. So yeah, Pete's our little star. He's about 2 years old, and he does love the camera, so we can never get him out of the camera.
I'm curious, you talk about the education side of things with here, so that must be a very big aspect of what you want to do. Obviously, conservation and protecting environment, and explain to people what, we'll call it progress, but it's just wholesale development and land clearing does and how it impacts the animals.
Yep.
But I'm curious, in your education program, how much do you use Wikipedia? What's your thought on it?
Yep. Look, to be completely honest, Wikipedia is my go-to for a lot of our information. Look, with any, I think as educators and, you know, education providers with all of our programs, you know, we've always got to fact check everything, you know, just to make sure the information we're putting out there. So it doesn't matter what site we go to, we'll still go to multiple sites to make sure we're getting the site that's correct. But look, Wikipedia is almost always accurate when it comes to the wildlife information here in Perth and WA. The information on there almost always reflects the information that's out on all the other, you know, government websites and other non-profit websites. So we use Wikipedia quite a lot as almost a first port of call to get that initial information.
Because it condenses everything.
It condenses everything right down, makes it very easy.
Exactly,
and then we can, you know, if we want, we'll fact check everything and get down to that detail. But no, look, we're very, we love Wikipedia and we always use it. Yeah.
What about on the veterinary side? And
look, with the veterinary side, because wildlife, there's no textbooks for wildlife medicine, so it doesn't even exist on most veterinary textbooks, let alone on Wikipedia. So no, we don't probably use Wikipedia much for veterinary medicine stuff, but in terms of educational messages, in terms of distribution of wildlife, you know, habitat, population densities, all that sort of stuff, we always, you know, we look at Wikipedia as a source. But yeah, veterinary medicine, it doesn't half the time even exist in a veterinary textbook, let alone online anywhere, so. We like to think we sort of specialise in emu rehabilitation and wrangling, I suppose, if you will. We do a lot of it. And last year we had a call, there was a emu, it was someone's pet emu that had gotten out onto the freeway. So it was actually on the news, it was walking down the freeway, there were, you know, it could have caused a serious accident, but, you know, the public were really good at trying to avoid it. And then it sort of went missing for a day, and it ended up being found in a local school, walking around the paddock. So fortunately, it wasn't during school term, but they had exams on, so we were able to close the gates, but it was still in a 20-acre space that we had to try and catch this emu. So it was a whole day exercise that I had to coordinate with our you know, more experienced animal handlers and rescuers, and we managed to contain the emu to a tennis court. And then from there we were able to load, you know, after we let it calm down, get it into a horse float. But that was 6.5 hours of trying to get this emu, and we don't want to stress them out, and we don't like to use any sedatives and chemicals on emus, so it's always going to be, you know, manual handling. But these are dangerous animals. If you handle them wrong, and on that day I got a nasty kick to the arm, still got the scar to prove it, so you don't want to be messing with emus because they're very big, very dangerous, and they can inflict some potentially serious, if not fatal, injuries if in the wrong circumstance. So unless you're trained to work with emus, don't go anywhere near them, leave them to professionals.
Wombat, hairy nose?
Yeah, so this is a southern hairy-nosed wombat. So they're the smallest species of wombat we have here in Australia. And this is Vinny. So Vinny's 9 years old, he's a good boy, but he does like to bite. Being a wombat, he likes to play, and their version of play is just bite really hard, which is fine for if you're a wombat, not so fine if you're another human. So another one of our wildlife ambassadors who educates people on the importance of preserving habitat for his species and what we can do to look after them.
I'm hoping this one is friendly rather than...
It's not as friendly if it's whether it was venomous or not.
Well, I did assume you wouldn't bring one that was venomous out to us.
Does Western Australia have the most toxic snakes in the world?
No, we've got of the world's most venomous snakes, a lot of the ones are from Western Australia, but yeah, in terms of venom potency, we don't claim that title, I'm afraid, here in WA.
Ah, well, that's nice to know. So it is kind of safe, except for the
six
other species in the top 10 that are here.
Yeah, no, I mean, Argyle's a non-venomous snake, so she's a
this
python.
is a python.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it's going to do is strangle me. It's looking for somewhere warm to curl up because it's not the best of days for it. So, well, thank you, Dean. That's very much appreciated, the tour and the walk through and the chat about everything you do here.
Yep.
Hopefully we can look at working with you in the future and keep improving the Wikipedia content and filling that great big gap on veterinary science that's sitting there. And
no, great, and look, thank you for the opportunity for us to show you guys what we do and potentially show your audiences what we do. We're really proud that we're wildlife of what we do in the community, and we just want to make sure that wildlife have a voice and that people have these connections with wildlife so that they can go and look after the natural environment to make sure these guys have a happy and healthy future going forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that's all right. And again, I hope everyone's enjoyed all the fluffy animals and birds and seeing that they're more to looking after wildlife than sticking them in a cage and charging people a fortune to get in. Rather let's educate and protect, and obviously Wikipedia helps you with that side of things as well. Thank you. I'm Mangara from Wikipedia, and this is Margie. She's the curator of the museums up here at Toodyay in Western Australia.
Hello everyone.
And she's going to take us for a walk around the museums and give us an insight into what it's like running a museum and types of things that museums actually do.
I'm pleased you can join us.
Toodyay is actually at the confluence of three Aboriginal groups. We have the Balladong, where essentially where we are now, this is the very edge of their territory, but we also include in Toodyay the Whadjuk folk from the Perth area, and the Ewd from the north. So our local Aboriginal community want us to acknowledge that this is a home of actually three. It's fairly unique. When we do acknowledgement, we have to acknowledge that there's three groups here who were the original custodians of this area.
When you have an event, you do an acknowledgement, which is just a welcome.
Sometimes we're able to have a member of the local community who can do a welcome. But we are sort of learning, and we're very happy to acknowledge the complexity of the culture that was here long before Europeans came.
So how long did it take the museum before it started collecting the Noongar history?
These interpretations date from the early 2000s. We're wanting to do, we're looking at adding. So we have, most of the objects in the collection are colonial history. That's the objects we have. So that is the story we're tending to tell, even though we have got some stories about local Aboriginal people in some of our panels, but we're going to add, this room here, one of the warders' quarters.
Yeah.
We have kitchen type things, food. We're going to add. Aboriginal people were obviously cooking and living. We want to include. We want to add information about that. And as we go around to the museum in the various areas that we've got interpretations growing up in Toodyay, we have, white European toys. Well, Aboriginal children were growing up. What were they experiencing? What were they doing? And this is something that's really exciting, and we're being advised and receiving information. And we hope, as part of these new interpretations that come on board soon, the voice, the local voice, will come through. We'll look at dark history too. We need to acknowledge that. And also across the road in the shearing shed, we're proposing panels about Noongar families included, added to the panels about European explorers, settlers that we have in place here.
This building was originally a prison?
This was a jail, so that where we are standing here are the warders' quarters. It was built by convicts. Convicts sent across from the United Kingdom, from Britain, built 1862, 1864. The whole building was handed over to the authorities in 1865. So we know this was used as a prison up until 1907. After which a new facility was built not far, just across the road, part of our museum precinct. At the moment, not usually open to the public because we haven't yet, we're using it for storage. We would love to open that. So we have the 20th century jail. This is the 19th century jail. It housed Aboriginal people as well as European people, but it was the local lockup. Although it was built by convicts, it was used not only to house convicts, but anyone who was misbehaving in colonial. This area was called Newcastle. The original settlement of Toodyay was further downriver.
Stables were here at one stage, was it?
You're right.
Were burned down?
Yes, true. And that happened in the 19th century, towards the end of the 19th century. Across the road from the jail, there were wooden stables built as part of the convict depot. This area was where originally where the sappers and the miners were, and there were stables to hold 7 horses, plus outlying buildings to hold feed and equipment. In 1890, the stables caught fire. They were wooden, with shingled roof and wooden floor boards. They think there was a, what do they call it, compost heap beside it that caught fire, and then the stable
so
itself.
it just spontaneous combustion.
It was caught very quickly. We had a mill across beside us, a flour mill, a steam flour mill. They saw the fire. They tooted their whistle to alarm everyone, and they actually got all the horses out. No horses, and they got all the equipment out too.
So you just lost
the stables. But you're exactly true. It's very vulnerable to fire. Our building here would be extremely vulnerable to fire. We've just had the shingles replaced, wooden shingles. It's extremely, and not far away we have Pelham Reserve, and of course, yes, we had a really bad fire here a little while ago, 15 years ago.
Now the stables had a connection to one of the characters from Toodyay?
Moondyne Joe's very connected to Toodyay. He escaped from the lockup, which at that stage was in one of the old depot buildings, and he scooted down to where the magistrate's house was, which has now been demolished. This was demolished when the standard gauge railway came through. Down near the current Toodyay railway station.
Oh, okay.
And that's where the magistrate lived, and that's where he obviously, the horse was being stored there, but he took the magistrate's saddle and bridle, and he got away. But yeah, those were the stables there. It was a big house, and yeah, obviously had stables.
Yeah, and Toodyay celebrates, or
We
does
do-
the Moondyne Joe in some?
Well, Moondyne Joe, he's named from the Moondyne Hills in the Toodyay area. He was a bushman very well. He knew the area very well. And what was happening, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, his exploits were being celebrated and claimed by other parts of Western Australia, and so the locals said, well, we've got to do something to reclaim him, because the legend began here. This is where the legend began. This is where he made his first escape. And so 30 years or so ago, that's when the Moondyne Festival, it's a really wonderful colonial festival, and I'd say probably West Australia's premier colonial festival that happens every year. And it's great. A lot of the locals dress up, and yeah, we celebrate the escapes of Moondyne Joe.
And Moondyne had a semi-permanent camp just out of town?
Well, he did, yes. I mean, certainly through the 1860s, 1850s, he was a very good bushman, and he certainly in the hills had a semi-permanent camp. He was a great bushman. And I think he was friends with quite a few of the local settlers, and no doubt they helped him. He would come back, especially during his escapes from Fremantle in the 1860s. He would tend to come back to Toodyay.
The Wikitown project, Toodyaypedia. That started way back 8 years ago.
It would be, yes.
And that was when we went out, I was invited. I met one of the Historical Society presidents, and he invited us to come out and join the CEO
right,
and a former mayor.
Yeah.
And we went out and GPS located Moondyne's gate. There's actually pictures on Wikipedia. And that was how we started that connection in the Toodyaypedia project, which is QR codes through the museums still and around the town.
Yes, yeah, it is a wonderful project, and what I love about it is I'm often quoted back information that we've actually put up on Wikipedia as a part of those projects. There's more than 60 articles within that great that encompasses the project and the 3 stages that we've rolled out. But it's when people come back to quote stuff that I thought, I know where you've got that from. You've got that from Wikipedia.
Word for word,
yeah. So it's been a really wonderful. What it's done is put a lot of information out there, historical information out there that people can access, and it really informs people's how they feel. And because we've put it out there, I can be confident that what people are learning is actually as best
based on the available knowledge and the sources
we can change, add, but what's there is the truth as far as we are aware at the time, and I think it's fabulous, and I don't think people realise how important that is. Yes. So it's been a wonderful project. Very happy to have been involved. This is Connor's Mill. It was built for Daniel Connor around about 1870. This is our second museum that the Shire of Toodyay has opened. We have it open 7 days a week, and access is through the Toodyay Visitor Centre.
And this one has more permanent displays.
It does. We do change over a display case on the top floor, but generally we've got larger objects in here. We've got our wonderful steam engine, which is permanently there. And we have flour milling machinery, large machinery, which is on display upstairs. We have a pulley system that runs from down here, operates the historic farming machine, historic milling machinery, and on the top floor we have a static display about agriculture, Toodyay's agricultural history.
Okay, well, just like to thank you, Margie, for showing us around. I know we're only got to the second floor of the old mill, but if anyone wants to see what's upstairs, they're going to have to come to Toodyay and have a look themselves at some stage.
Absolutely, it's been a wonderful pleasure to have you.
Yeah, and it's fun working on all these QR codes.
Oh, it is, and it's just, I just, it's all about knowledge, sharing knowledge, learning, and that's what Wikipedia
So
does
the
for me.
future can learn from what we did in the past.
Absolutely.
And all our lovely mistakes.
Yeah, it's so accessible too, and it's a wonderful resource, yeah.